All right. We're live, fellas.
Yo.
We are live. Maybe everyone should say hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
So we have a couple of guests today, so it's gonna be an interesting one. It's gonna be a late night streaming today too. So might be a little rowdy at places. So invited Alex, but we also have one of our students and one of Alex's mentorship students here too, Calina. So yeah, there we go. And obviously our MVP, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Momo.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So what I'm gonna start with is something that I want to do regularly, and I'll maybe start with that, and then after I'm done, then we'll switch to Alex's screen and see him do the ZBrush sexiness. So let me quickly go over some of the homework. So this time around, I'm doing gonna do a quick overview of the homework from Lars Sowig.
I just added him, actually.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, Lars. How's it going, man?
Hey. Yeah,
I'm
going good.
Not
How
sure if
about
you guys
you?
can see my screen, but you'll be able to probably see it on the stream with the little delay. Or maybe Momo, if you could add him.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll send him a link.
To go to meeting. That'll be fine too.
Yep.
That could work too. Because then he'll be able to. Because I'm gonna just share screen and you guys will be able to see it. But yeah, so one of the things that obviously I want to do and I'm doing and will be doing and Ash will be doing and everyone else will be doing is a little bit of hats off to our students over at Learn Squared. And one of the reasons I've been saying this a couple of times already, upload your homeworks if you guys are enrolled to any of the classes, whether it's mine or Ash's class. We're trying to do it every week. Momo is helping us to pick one work from the uploads for us to do a quick review. So you might not be in the mentorship, but you might have a chance to have a taste of it at least. So that's what it is. I'm gonna wait till Lars is on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just like
Okay, fine.
I want you to see the screen too. So
Did you get the link? Are you on?
Second, it's loading. It's loading pretty long.
Loading. Alright, let's look at this sexy image instead for a second. Yeah, you don't see it yet, but I'm looking at my own image. Just
Just looking at a picture of me.
I'm looking at the picture of myself. I have a Showtime image on the screen, and the second screen is just one giant photo of myself, half naked or
Awesome.
something like
Okay,
that.
now I can see it now.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna switch to yours. Anyway, so I'm gonna start with good job. Obviously, there's few things that I would work on, and as you probably know, by just watching the reviews that I do on mentorships, I'm trying to be as honest as possible with all of my comments and whatnot. So there's a couple of issues here that I would try to fix. Overall, it's going in the right direction, but there's just a little bit of few things that I would go over with and try to change. So one of the nice things about it is I can sort of feel the light directionality, but I also miss a little bit of that light directionality in some places. So it's very apparent here when you look at the face and the neck and hand right here. But what happens is it starts to get really tricky on the body itself. And from what I understand, and I can tell it from just looking at it and looking at where the shadows are and the sharpness of the shadow. The light is pretty small. It's like a very sharp light source, and it's going, from outside of the frame towards the character, right? More or less in that direction, more or less. So one of the things that is missing, like right from the get-go, is the hair itself is not casting any shadow in your image. So you would want to fix that right away, and that's going to make a big difference by just knowing that the hair itself would start casting shadow, especially like right here. It, depending on the movement of the hair itself, it would that basically adds the depth to the whole thing. Now, the second thing is I'm seeing that there's like sort of like a gobo. It's basically like a shadow here, and then there's another light coming from this direction. So
yeah, already looks better. Yeah.
So one of the things that I would do here is like another thing that I would do here is, if you have a light that is coming from the other direction, I usually try to keep lighting to be consistent, meaning that you're going to have a key light and then everything else is basically a supporting light. I try to avoid adding too many lights in my images too, because it just becomes really hard to read at some point. So what I would do is, I would have that, because you kind of suggested it here with the rim light, like a little backlight. So you could have that here on the hair itself, and you kind of have those little strings of hair that are picking out and whatnot. I'll keep those, but then I would make that part right here darker, especially because you already sort of have this darker shadow over here. So I would definitely go ahead and expand that. And also what I've noticed is that there's like a little bit of different coloration going on here. I would try to avoid maybe a little bit of that. You started with like the blonde sort of hairstyle, and I would keep it consistent, because the discoloration, I get what you're trying to do, is like you have more of a pink lights coming from this direction, but it's just discoloring the hair too much. So I would try to avoid doing that. Let's see. I added hue saturation. Okay. So I'll go. It's probably magentas. Yeah, something like this. Probably go under it here too. So just more consistency in general, and if you might want to keep that pink light that you have here, that's fine. But then I would, in order to keep that and make it look interesting, I would just maybe make it so that your rim light itself is that pink light, and then it would just make the image more consistent, because then you're adding like the secondary light source, and it's basically more consistent in that way, and then it would probably hit the shoulder right here, so it could lit it up right now here, and that's like for the lighting. And I would just keep going and keep fixing the light. So obviously, like for instance, the leg itself here would probably have a little bit of that light hitting here, like a softer light, and then you probably hear a little bit of that fabric. So that alone kind of gives you that leg sticking out a little more, and it's sort of like I think it just basically makes it pop a little more and sort of be a little more three-dimensional in a way, But the biggest issue is the shoulder, and I think the way, like the easiest way to fix it is, obviously, you look where the light is coming from, and because the shoulder, when it would be sticking out, it would probably be the brightest on its corner right here. So it's like right over here, you would have a little bit of more brightness going on. I probably overkilled it with dodge tool, but I'll just make it brighter here. And the second thing is right now the texture itself is very flat across. So this area right here would have to have squeezed. You would have to squeeze the texture, the noise of the texture, so it's not as flat as this part right here. So what I mean by this is, like, you would do something like this. Where it's very squeezed and not as frequent. The pattern is not camera facing, and maybe it could be a little darker here too.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're moving the shoulder towards the camera a little more, and maybe like if you added a little shadow over here, that also could add, depending on how the fabric behaves. You would have to probably look into that too. But generally, those are mostly small things. But my intention here is to fix the lighting, because I feel like the lighting is ruining the final result that you could get out of this image. It's the inconsistency of the lighting. It's too many lights added. The background, you moved away the background from the main character, which is good because that gives the nice separation. The only problem is it's still, like, I would probably make it out of focus as well. So small things, but quite a few of them. So it's just like, I would try to address the lighting first, then maybe go and blur out the background. If you want to have the background sharper, then you have to think about what kind of lens is being used and all that, but that's about it.
I agree, yeah.
That's
awesome.
That's about it.
Thanks a lot, man. It's already looking like way better. It's crazy.
Of course.
No, it's really good. Like, I don't know. Like, when I look at it now, it's fairly old already. But yeah, I also felt like the lights are not really sharp. Like, it's like kind of diffused.
You can see like this is so much flatter, and
Yeah, exactly.
The hair looks kind of pasted, but now like when you add those elements, it just pops out a little more.
Volume.
And there's more areas in this image that would need that's the same treatment, but you see where I'm getting at, right? So
yeah, totally. Yeah,
cool.
Thanks.
All right. Let me switch screens so that our friend here, our good friend Alex, can do some magic.
Thanks, Lars.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let me
Awesome work.
add boo boo boo. Alex, you named yourself Learn Squirt 2. What is that?
I have not touched my name. Oh, what's going on? Share my screen. Here we go.
Yeah, there we go. Let's see. There we go.
Coming through. Random blob on the screen.
Yes, we see the randomness of the blobs of the screen. So all good.
That
Everyone
puts it
knows.
in context.
Well, now it makes sense, and that's something you're doing in your class as well, right? Like when I started watching it, I'm on the like almost finished with the lesson 2, but the way I personally approach it is like going through the lessons and seeing what can apply to the things that I really want to do with it. But this sculpt is putting it to a whole next level, dude.
This one now?
Yeah, looking pretty sick, dude.
Yeah, I was just playing about with something over the weekend, and this is actually kit bash to hell. So it's like comprised of probably like 3 different work in progress models.
Mm-hmm.
And then a load of like IMMs. So like all these like hard surface elements, I didn't model them, so I can't take credit for that. But yeah, it's really quick workflow to kind of, you have basically like a toolbox with all your assets, and you can just draw them in.
Yeah.
And bash your design together in a very short amount of time.
It's good
And
though.
yeah, it's just a bit of fun.
For anyone who's watching this, I'm pretty sure quite a few who are on the stream, they already know that this is what it's in the class, or not necessarily this, but stuff like that is in the class itself. But yeah, it's this is what you're teaching in your class, right? Like more or less.
Yeah, I actually I don't really cover kit bashing in the class. I do cover a little bit of usage of the IMMs, the insert multi-mesh brushes, but I try to keep everything like original content, so not reusing other people's work. Like I bought all of Vitaly's kit bash pieces,
right? And
they're amazing to use, but I didn't really want to rely on that. I wanted to kind of concentrate more on the kind of sculpting process. So yeah, that's really the focus of the class.
Yeah.
More than kit bashing.
Yeah. I'm like 2 lessons in. It's holy shit. It's so much information. It's just.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
There's quite a lot going on there. It's pretty big for anyone who's curious. Like, is it for me? Would I get enough information? Yeah, you will. Just sign up. And Calina is here with us too, right? You're Alex's mentorship student, right?
Yeah, I used to take Jama's mentorship too for 3D code.
Yeah. And how do you like it? I compared, because I've never used. I wanted to learn 3D code, but I'm more into ZBrush recently. You've been working with both, so you can compare, right?
Well, compared to 3D code, coming to ZBrush, I think it's pretty much more buttons I'm gonna have to press. More menus, more buttons.
Yeah, UI sucks.
You get used to it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and especially since it's compressed into 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy class. Sure.
Basically, I kind of started the class not knowing anything about ZBrush, so yeah, it's crazy. I had to kind of onion some stuff I picked up from 3D code and kind of adapt to how ZBrush works.
So from a perspective of, because it means that's you're a beginner in ZBrush, right? So from your perspective, what is the hardest thing when you, because I feel like ZBrush is one of those software where it's so intimidating at the first glance. It's very much like Maya. Like when you first start working in Maya, it's like, holy shit, there's so much going on the screen that I don't even know where to start. And I feel like ZBrush has the same vibe, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing is my user interface, I kind of customize it, so I have a lot of buttons on the screen. It's easier not to get yours. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you like hop over the UI and sort of like start to understand the logic behind ZBrush, I feel like it becomes a little more intuitive and easier. It's definitely a very powerful tool, and I'm personally learning. I'm doing a little bit of a different thing than your class, Alex. It's more cool. It's more like I'm trying to build in the sort of the workflow with DAZ 3D and sort of like working with the likeness of models and actors and whatnot. So it's a definitely like more of a character artist workflow.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few tools that I've learned, and the way you approach ZBrush, which is slightly different than I used to when I was learning it myself, which is kind of cool. So I'm finding quite a lot of application from what you're teaching. I'm just not enough into a content myself. I wish I was on lesson 3 now, but I'll eventually get there.
There's time.
I had some ideas to what I'm gonna ask you, but I fucking forgot.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned like you're taking the lessons and you're applying them in a different way.
Yeah.
A few of the students have done that. I kind of wanted them to interpret the brief in their own way. Obviously, they could like use it mine as like a blueprint and kind of build off that. But a lot of the students, including Calina, have taken the brief and they're doing something different with it, which is really exciting to see that they're taking those lessons and they're extrapolating that information and applying it in different ways. So you're going to see a whole range of characters other than kind of like mechs with bomber jackets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool.
So one of the things I'm going to ask you actually is, and I know because you're using it differently than the character artist would use it. But it's good to have a perspective on the software from like a different point of view on it. And one of the things that I'm trying to figure out whether it makes sense or not is the layers, not subtools, but the layers where you're using layers to add deformations, and then there's morph targets. I'm just confused if using morph targets is something that like. Do you use morph targets at all? Do you use them in your workflow, or
only for only creating instances of like poses, and then I'd create a morph target, basically like a lower res OBJ, and then use that in Marvelous Designer. In ZBrush, I don't really use the layer system, to be honest. It does have applications, but I found it wasn't that useful for my workflow. I might be missing out on something really big there.
Yeah,
but for me,
I don't know.
I didn't really get a great deal from using the layers here. What were you talking about in regards to the morph targets, though?
I could add on to that actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
You could actually use morph targets and layers together. So basically what I did was carve some details onto a layer, turn it off, and save the morph target out. Then turn back the layer on and then stop more details. What you can do then is erase the details with the morph brush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's pretty cool
So you have
when
like
you're adding detail and wanting to erase them without kind of ruining the geometry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. It's like, it's. I can actually hear myself. God damn it. But
also, you can reverse the depth of the carvings and whatnot details you added.
Right. But you can only store one morph target per. Do you store like morph target per subtool?
Yeah,
or it's per
I kind
whole
of
thing?
store one morph target per subtool, and what I usually do is store the blank subtool without any detail.
Gotcha. That's cool. I'm gonna have to try that.
So you're like masking details with it and bringing them back and forward. Is that
Yes.
Pretty
much.
That could be pretty useful.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
like
I
a
picked
useful
that up
thing.
from some character artists.
Very cool. I had more questions. Fuck, I forgot. I'm pretty bad.
I mean, there's one here. You mentioned Alex is using ZBrush differently from a character artist. So someone's asking, how would a character? What are those differences, pretty much?
Yeah, Alex, you want to answer that, or?
Well, I'm not a character artist, so I couldn't give you a full in-depth like kind of analysis of how they use the tool. Like, I'm definitely coming at it from a concept art perspective.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally the tools are the same for the most part in terms of sculpting.
Yeah.
But in terms of the level of finish and things like topology, like I don't really care about topology. I'm working at such resolutions that doesn't really cause an issue. And often that kind of stuff is done properly. I say properly, like for game res models by the character art team.
Yeah.
So I don't let that part of the process into my workflow. So I guess that would be more kind of character art centric. I'm more into just the purely conceptual design side of it, and just using it as a tool for concepting. But I mean, the applications for this are vast for this software.
Yeah,
So-
one of the things that I mean, obviously, majority of the sculpting tools gonna be pretty much the same. I think it's more with like those hidden things that you have there, like like morph targets and some of the layer features. I've seen character artists using that. Topology is the biggest thing, I would say. Like obviously you sculpt it, but then you also optimize it towards towards the game assets, if it's a game asset thing. Level of finish, obviously, because like for instance, on what I'm doing right now with that face character face and whatnot, a lot of things when it comes to like displacement map, when I'm still trying to crack it, like the displacement map workflow, when I'm exporting it, it's not the right resolution, or there's like issues with the depth of it, and so I'm trying to crack that stuff and make sure that I'm following the right workflow for this. But even things like going into the facial structure and then trying to add details in the displacement map, that itself it's requiring you to be so much more focused on like the finite detail in order to create something that is really realistic, versus like what you're doing is more concept. You're basically creating the whole figure, concepting the whole idea without really figuring out what the pores of the skin gonna look like, right? Because you don't really care
No.
about that at this point. So again, that's something that the character artist would do more likely. I remember when I was at Naughty Dog, I remember seeing or peeking at some of what the character artists do. And again, like, bear in mind, I'm not a character artist, so there's a lot of things that I might be saying that can be wrong too. But I could tell, like, there's much more attention to like what the hair is gonna look like, and modeling it, and then using Marvel's Designer to create a cloth, but then bringing it back to ZBrush and working on it, or working with it inside of ZBrush to create the morph targets that would be then exported for animation and whatnot. So it's like there's quite a few different layers when it comes to getting everything done in the right way. One of the things I found frustrating, and I don't know if you have that same issue, Alex, is that whenever you delete or merge down a subtool, it's like you cannot control Z that anymore ever.
Yes.
No, that is really annoying.
And it's why I duplicate my subtools often.
Yeah. How many subtools you end up getting on average on a sculpt like the one you're working on right now?
Right now, what you can see on the right, I have a lot here, probably over 100, and it depends on the design, obviously, like and how you. Pardon? Yeah, over 100. But I mean, this has been really kit bashed, so I can kind of like isolate some of these here.
Right. Makes sense.
Like that's a separate subtool to this, and I've kept them separate so I can apply materials to these individual pieces, and I have greater control when I go into Keyshot. But I mean, the amount of subtools, I mean, you can have dozens and dozens and dozens, and it's not a problem at all. I mean, I wouldn't like say I stick to a certain number. It's just totally dependent on the design and kind of like how I want to take that into my renderer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing a sculpt a while back, and I had like, I don't remember. I think it was like 50, 20 somethings subtools. I was like, damn, I'm going over the top, and then you said like, oh, it's over 100.
Yeah, I mean, I've had well over 100, and you won't really get any performance issues unless you get individual subtools that are like millions and millions and millions of polys.
Okay.
I usually stick to like roughly if I'm hitting like 4 million points per for like a subtool, then I'm thinking like I probably want to decimate this soon.
So do you decimate, or do you like use, I don't know, Dynamesh Master or something like that?
Sorry, which one?
So when let's say you're working on an asset, right? Let's say the part of the helmet that you're working on, and you want to add like really, finite details to it.
Yeah.
But then it's approached because it's a bigger asset, right? It's a bigger part of the design. You're slowly approaching that 4 million mark, and then would you then decimate, or would you use Dynamesh Master or something like that to bring it down?
Well, I'd probably stay in Dynamesh until I'd pretty much finalized that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for like 4 million is a lot of polygons,
Right.
you can get a hell of a lot of information with that amount, especially on like individual pieces. I basically take it to as close to finish as I wanted, and then I'd decimate it when I don't really want to alter it anymore. But I do that less now with the Keyshot bridge. Like usually I don't really have to decimate my meshes. Previously my workflow was having to export my entire model, and it would be a maximum of like a few million points for it to import into Keyshot. But with the bridge, it's like you can import a 30 million point tool, and it's it's not like one button click, which is super useful for concepts. Like you can be really quick with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because normally you would be decimating and then exporting and importing into the software, whether it's Keyshot or Max or Maya. Maya and Max I could go up to, depending on what machine you have, but on my machine I can go up to 40 million, 50 million polygons. It's still working pretty well.
Wow.
Anything past that is starting to slow down quite a bit. But yeah, decimating makes more sense. Especially like you can go really low on decimation too, because even though you're gonna have those sharper angles in some places, you with the smoothing groups, you can deal with that pretty well. So there's obviously a fine balance that you have to find, but overall it's a pretty straightforward. But again, like one click is kind of good.
It's hard to match that. The other kind of application for decimating is like if I wanted to prototype this in engine. I could get a version of this and decimate it right down so they can test it for animation or even just as a static mesh in the engine, rather than having to go to like a third party like the character art team or an environment artist to have to like decimate it themselves. I can just do that really easily. So it's a really useful function.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Have you ever tried working with Octane or V-Ray or anything like that? Or
no, I haven't. I'm actually new to rendering. Like I did a little bit at university, like a long time ago now, and then only recently I got back into it. And right. I say got back into it. I started with Keyshot. So I started using ZBrush maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I'd use the renderer within Keyshot, within ZBrush, sorry. And then Keyshot came along, and it was it's like a no-brainer to use that software. Like it's so easy. So kind of just ran with that. But looking at the results that you guys are getting from like Octane and V-Ray, it's just like unreal, like just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to put a lot of work in. So that's something that I do want to get into. It's just finding the time to dedicate myself to another bit of software.
Yeah, maybe we can jump on like a future stream. Not now because like we're not ready, obviously, but like maybe you, me, and Ash, and get like a stream going where we could take your model and start playing with it in Octane or something like that. That could be fun.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah, we should do that definitely, because then we could you would see whether it's useful or not for your workflow. I feel like for concepting, depending on what kind of results you want to have, Keyshot is enough, because Keyshot is like a product. It's very good for product render. It's very, very straightforward. It's probably the easiest renderer out there. It's just click and works.
Yeah, and they have like a material library set up for you as well, so
yeah,
you have like a good base to draw from.
Yeah,
And like they have like a bunch of HDRIs, and it basically comes with a your full starter kit.
yeah,
So you can really quickly get some pretty decent looking renders out. It's missing a bunch of features, and like you say, it's good for products but not for scenes. And I have done scenes in there, and it can handle a lot. Like it can handle a shitload of polys. I don't know how it compares to Octane in that regard, but it has no atmospherics, has no volumetrics.
yeah.
So you'd have to like add that stuff manually, either in Photoshop or something like that. But it's good. It's a good bit of software.
Yeah, Octane is it might be tricky. It's like apple and oranges, honestly, because Keyshot is CPU render. It's not a GPU render. Octane is GPU only. V-Ray is both. Like you could use GPU or CPU rendering. I think in Octane you can set it up. The biggest issue with GPU rendering is the memory. So it's really fast if you can use the GPU memory, but then it slows down to CPU speeds when you have to add the out of memory. When you're out of memory, in Octane you can add the system memory, but it's not gonna be as fast anymore. So that's the biggest issue, because like GPU rendering, if you have a good graphics card, like if you have 1080s or 980, like 980s, right? Your render is gonna be blazing fast, dude. Like the CPU cannot catch up with that at all.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised how insane results you can get quickly with Octane or even V-Ray RT. My biggest gripe with V-Ray, I love V-Ray. I use it as my primary rendering engine for everything. At least these days. I used to be more on an Octane realm for the longest time, but the more I explore and understand V-Ray, especially with the changes they did, and I had Grant Warwick this morning. We were talking about some of the good stuff that V-Ray has. It's insane how much realistic stuff you can do in V-Ray. The biggest issue is you don't have that library. You don't have like materials that you can just drag and drop and they work. Like that's something that is definitely missing from the equation. I wish it was there. They are kind of introducing it. It's slightly different. It's actually a bad example because they've introduced this VR scans that we kind of glazed over today with Grant, which is basically like 3D scanning of the materials. They scan the properties, the reflectivity, everything, like all the physical aspects of the material up to like 2 millimeters of depth. And the result is that when you zoom in, you can see all the details from bump to displacement, discoloration, transmission, all that. It looks just amazing. It's just super clean. That's the biggest issue.
Right.
So, and it's not something that you can modify, which means like you cannot change the glossiness textures and whatnot.
Oh.
So that's the. But like for instance, if you're doing like a car design, right, and you need to add the car seat stuff, like the car seat material, whether it's leather or Velcro, whatever that is, right? It's just like you slap it on and it just looks like a photo. Like all of a sudden, the quality is just insane. It's just not really that much customizable. But apparently, from what Grant was showing today briefly, you can use that as a base layer, and then you can add a lot of like additional stuff to it, which is kind of insane how much flexibility you have by doing that. And obviously the way the GI is handled is different to Keyshot, but yeah, you cannot beat the easiness of use of a Keyshot, that's for sure. Yeah, dude, this model looks insane.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if on close inspection you can see it's just hacked together.
Yeah,
but it looks alright from a distance.
No, but
kinda.
See what you're doing there is like you kind of slap things together, which from the distance looks pretty cool. But then now you're going in, you're zooming in and fixing it and making sure it all sort of sits together nicely. So
yeah, I'm kind of noodling right now. I'm not really thinking. I'm just doing, unfortunately, which is not good. I'll probably just like delete this immediately after. But sometimes you like work on a piece for like half an hour and you're like, it looks crap. Like, what was I thinking?
that happens.
And you just slide the history all the way back. But yeah, it is great for the broader strokes, and that's pretty much what we do. Like, we at work we've been using it to like block out a lot of our concepts, and immediately the art director can get a good idea of the shape and the volume, and they can turn it round, and you're not too worried about the really fine details at that point. Obviously that stuff comes down the line, but yeah, it's an amazing tool. It's I'm pretty much hooked. Like since I kind of picked up a few of the tools and the workflow started to make sense. Like I'm using it like every day.
Right. Do you ever build from the poly modeling inside of ZBrush? You have that they added this functionality like with not the most recent, but a few releases back. That the poly modeling tools that kind of
Z modeler.
Yeah, Z modeler.
Yes.
I actually don't. I've used it like a couple of times, but I find I'm not fluid enough with it yet that I'm. It's better to use that than using like my clipping tools and working in Dynamesh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot more comfortable in that regard. It is something I would like to kind of delve into a little more, but I also feel that it's not the strength of the software. Like the strength of the software is with the sculpting,
right?
And the fact that I think that the sculpting tools are pretty much unparalleled for any other kind of software like Mudbox or 3D Coat. I think the brushes and stuff you get in ZBrush kind of top all of them. So if I was going to do like proper hard surface modeling or proper poly modeling, I'd probably want to jump into another bit of software.
Right.
That's not to say that the tool's not really good. It's just not something that I've like jumped into and I found intuitive right away. They have like a different way. Obviously, they have a different way of doing something because it's pixel logic, but it's not it doesn't feel like your normal poly modeling tools. It's kind of contextual. So you like hover over a line, and you'll get a different set of options to when you're over a face or a vert.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like there's some incredible artwork and designs made using that tool. So I'm not really selling it. But yeah, it's something. It's another aspect that the software was missing previously. There wasn't anything within the software that could really do that.
Right.
You can manipulate individual verts, like if you get down to a really fine level. I mean, maybe even on this piece you could see, but like I could actually like manipulate individual verts if I wanted to. You know, I could kind of like, oh, the brush is too big. Let's see, yeah, like I can move like an individual vert if I want, and I can kind of like select individual faces, and there is some degree of control like in the package already. But yeah, the Z model, I think, you know, it's probably pretty robust, but I've not given it a good go yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious how it works. If it's even
Get
worth.
stuck in, man.
What's up?
Get stuck in. You can teach me.
I use it sometimes.
Oh, is it good?
It's pretty okay. Well, I haven't really got the hang of it, but it's pretty nifty for making shapes and all that.
What about how does it compare to 3D Code? Because I know 3D Code works pretty well, right?
In 3D Code, you don't exactly have control over the polygon, so yeah, that's pretty different actually. I mean, for Z model, you have control of every polygon and vertex and edges too, so it's basically like a normal 3D program except in ZBrush own weird way of doing things again.
Cool.
Yeah, yes, some quirks here and there, but it's still pretty robust, I guess.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm kind of like trying to convince myself to use it for hard surface, you know, whether it's ZBrush or learning
Fusion.
Well, yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, like learning 3D Code or sticking with ZBrush, because right now Fusion seems to me like it's not so organic. It will be a difficult thing to do in terms of like creating an organic, more organic looking designs. They require much more effort and work in order to get them done right.
Yeah.
But the level of detail is infinite. You know, you can basically go in and just keep zooming in, and the sharpness is gonna stay.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to decimate, or it's not like you have to, you know, add like millions of polys and whatnot. It's all surfaces, and you know, it just becomes heavier and heavier depending on how many details you can add, not how small the detail is, you know. So that's, and they are like, if you're doing a Boolean and you're not adding any fillets or chamfers or anything like that, it's going to be razor sharp edges, you know.
Yeah.
Because it's basically how it works. It's all mathematically correct in a way. So when you look at Vitali, for instance, his designs where you see those micro, you know, booleans with ton of detail, like all of that is done inside CAD software, you know. So it can make really insane results. Someone mentioned on the stream whether it's 1 FPS. One of the limitations of the streaming that we have these days is the fact that if I would be streaming, it would be 30, but if I'm sharing the screen of the guest, it's the limitation of the speed of internet for both ways, because we're using GoToMeetings to share screen from Alex. So it's gonna be obviously a little less FPS.
Oh, is it like 1 frame a minute or something right now?
It's pretty slow. It's like one or 2 frames per second. It kind of looks funny. It's alright though. It's alright.
Sorry guys. Sorry, I move slow. What can I say?
I'm much more slower than you.
Guys, if you want to ask questions, you know, it's your chance. So keep stabbing at it. But yeah, like I've picked up ZBrush myself because you know what, I was like, I already knew a little bit of ZBrush before. I did experiment with it and learned a little bit of it, but I kind of dropped it. I didn't find that I could make it as useful as I want to, because I wasn't like balls deep into 3D at all before when I was learning it. But now I'm getting to a point where it's like, I wanna be at the point where I don't need to ask anyone any questions. I want to do. I don't want to ask anyone for favors. Like, hey, can you? Like, would love to collab and do this sculpture. No. I want to be at the point where I'm doing it. You know what I mean? It's like I might collab and ask for help with the very specific things, but be able to do them myself. So.
It is that initial hurdle, though. It's
pretty
terrifying.
Difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a while just to get the workflow down, know where all the tiny little buttons are, and what does what. But that's kind of why I try to distill all that into the course. Yeah. So hopefully it's made it a lot easier for people, because it took me a long time to figure some of this stuff out, and I did have help from friends as well. So, I've got to give credit to my colleagues who helped me out for the last, 3 or 4 years.
When you picked up, when we started creating a course, because that's the first time you're teaching, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the best? Like, what would be the thing that you learned from teaching? Because everyone has a different story. I'm just curious, if there's anything that changed in your perspective when you started teaching. Did you have any epiphany that, oh shit, I haven't thought about this or that, or did it change any your perspective towards teaching itself, or students, or yourself, or the level of knowledge you have?
Well, it made me dig deeper and try and solve problems that I was having that I didn't want the students to run into. Mm-hmm. So I learned through the process, and in fact, I think I re-recorded a good part of the third lesson, because I found something out, and it was to do with the morph targets in Marvelous Designer. Yeah. And I was like, I have to share this. So I actually ditched all of that lesson and then redid it, which kind of sucked at the time, but in retrospect it was a really good decision. And I think even that kind of that functionality in the software is incredible. I don't know if you've used the morph targets in Marvelous. I'm sure you have with your DAS posing and stuff like that. But I didn't really know about that before, and I found out, and I was like, yeah, this has to be shared.
Morph targets in Marvelous? No, I don't. I know you can use, you can morph, you can upload or import OBJ as a morph for animation ish, in a way. So
that's basically it. Yeah, okay, you're basically you're turning your avatar into another
pose,
a pose or whatever. Okay. But I didn't realize that. I didn't even know that was a thing. So when I was kind of trying to dig into a kind of a good workflow for the students, mm-hmm. that popped up, and that was something I had to implement. But also, I realized that my perception of my work is very different to the viewers, and I think that's something that every artist probably struggles with, is how they view their own work.
Right.
And
except
things
Maciej.
Except Maciej. Yeah, I see all the issues and all the problems that I've had, and for instance, in this sculpt, I know I've hacked this to pieces. It's really kit bashed. So
yeah,
I know the kind of trickery behind it, but for the viewer, obviously, they're not aware of that journey. They're not aware of that process. They just see the end result. So that's something that became quite apparent through doing this process. Something I became more aware of. But I definitely grew while creating the course. I was basically working on it for 4 or 5 months. Trying to put all that knowledge that I've kind of gathered and all the trial and error over the past few years into a course. And, I'm writing down, notes and how to structure the lessons and stuff like that. And while I'm doing that, I'm refreshing my memory. So I think it's a really good process. Like even on a day-to-day basis, like, trying to pass knowledge on to peers and your colleagues, I think is a really good, it's a good thing for any artist, I think. It doesn't even need to be art, it could be any discipline, but sharing knowledge and teaching, I think, is a great process for someone.
It opens up your thinking methods. It makes you more like, the biggest issue I found when I started teaching was like you feel vulnerable in a way that you're sort of exposing the way you work, and sort of like perception is that it might take away the magic of your work, in a way.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, though, it's like, it's maybe it's a good thing that you're letting it go, because maybe because you feel vulnerable, and you don't have that thing that no one knows about. It's out there. Everyone can now copy it if they want to. Not that most of people are gonna be successful. A lot of students will, but you're still gonna be the one of a kind. That's what I saw happening basically. People like to take what they learn and spin it in the way that works for them, which is great. Like seeing progress from students is one of the most amazing things. But one of the magical thing that happens in your brain when you release that knowledge is that all of a sudden you get more interested with finding new ways to teach and learn and explore and become better at something. And I found that really quickly. The moment I started teaching, it was pretty much the moment when I started teaching that was the moment I started learning as well. Like learning much more than I used to. Spending much more time developing new skills, learning new tools, and trying to find out if there's anything I can do with the workflow that I have already and improve it. Find a different way, because I already taught everyone what's the way how am I approaching specific things, how am I painting, what textures I'm using, what tools I'm using, and all that. It's out there already, and that makes me like want to change something up and learn something new, because like I feel like, all right, push that baby out. Now it's the time for the next one, So
yeah.
That's,
and I think that's something that definitely occurred to me through the process. And obviously, I was like watching a lot of artists, including yourself, while I was creating the material, and I was seeing the stuff you guys were kicking out, you and Ash, with either Cinema 4D or Octane or V-Ray. Yeah. And I was just like, oh man, that's some next level ish right there. I want a taste of that. So, I've got a list of things that I want to be moving towards. Fusion being one of them, and also another renderer. But it's definitely made me hungry. Like now, I've kind of given away a bunch of my secrets, and everyone knows my process. So yeah, now you're right. It's time to change things up and grow some more.
The best thing about it is when any of your students, like all of a sudden become successful with what they've learned from you. That's the most wonderful feeling for a teacher, because like not only that whatever you've done, whatever you created, it became a useful thing, not just like an image that you post on ArtStation that everyone just clicks likes and pretty much forget about later down the road, but it's more of like your creation helped someone to become better, and maybe improve the quality of their life by getting better jobs and stuff like that. So you get those. I don't know whether you're getting those messages or not. You will probably know better, obviously, but me and Ash and quite a few other teachers I spoke to, yeah, we get messages from students constantly, whether it's students from Learn Squared or fans of the podcast, Collective Podcast or Art Cafe, like saying thank you, and it's just like when you hear that, it's just like it's a validation for what you do, It's like, fuck yeah,
Totally.
It's totally worth it. So
yeah, and also seeing how they've taken the lessons and they've absorbed all that information and they're applying it in their work, and the results are great.
Yeah.
I do get a few messages from the students, and it's always awesome to hear from them saying, like, I'm really appreciating the time and effort you put into the course, and that's really, like, it makes it all worth it, seeing it well received, because obviously you spend a lot of time developing the actual course, and you don't know how well it's going to be received, and you have these kind of insecurities in your mind,
right?
And then for when it dropped, and then getting positive feedback from people has been incredible. I'm hoping
you're gonna get more of that for sure as the time goes.
Yeah, and you've been like super active in the Slack, so I think that's a big that's something students really appreciate. Like you're super available, and that's always a big bonus.
Yeah, that's I didn't even know about Slack before, but it's a great website or tool, I guess, for teams.
Yeah, it's a good communication tool for sure. It's more intuitive than forums, it seems, because it's like a big forum / chat. So
yeah,
it's fucking awesome. Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about jumping into some questions. Calina, do you have any questions to Alex that you want to ask or something like that?
I'm thinking about it.
I have one. Alex, I was going to ask you, like, usually people are super intimidated getting started into ZBrush because of the UI and all that. Like, throughout your course, what was the biggest thing people struggled with? Perhaps technical or conceptual. What was their biggest hurdle?
Good question. I mean, I guess it's down to the individual. I don't know if there was any one thing that really stood out. I guess there's some kind of like little some kind of technical things with the software that aren't apparent. For instance, Dynamesh being tied to like world scale. So that, I mean, it doesn't say that anywhere, and it's not intuitive. You just kind of find that out through using the tool. But like people, basically, I stay in Dynamesh the whole time. I very rarely come out of Dynamesh. Some people are probably cursing my name right now. But like, if I was running out of resolution, I'd potentially just scale up the whole scene, and then I can get extra resolution. I think a lot of people were kind of struggling. They were saying they couldn't get the fidelity or they couldn't get the finish that they wanted.
Yeah.
Even with the same tools that I'm using, and often when kind of inspecting what they were doing, they just didn't have the resolution. And there's a few little issues like that aren't that apparent from when you're first using the software, but they're pretty easy to remedy. So yeah. Other than that, I don't think there was any like major issues. I was just trying to help the students in the various aspects, both technical and kind of like artistically, like thinking about design and stuff like that. But there wasn't any one thing that really stood out to me as being an issue.
Yeah, it seems everyone had a really good time. At least just looking at sort of being in on the mentorships. Like people have been bumping their heads against ZBrush sometimes, but the results, some of the homework that came out of the course is pretty awesome.
We've actually got our final week coming up for
this Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, so if you guys are listening, I hope
get your homework ready.
Get your homework ready. But and like you touched upon it very early on tonight, Maciej, when you said there's a lot of content in the course, and
Yeah, there's
I mean,
a shit ton of content, dude. It's
yeah, like
intense.
I can see, you know, if you're not working on it almost solidly, and you're trying to absorb all the information and apply it, then you know it can be pretty tough. But the lesson's there forever. You know, once you've purchased that, you've got it indefinitely, and you can just kind of revisit it when you feel,
Exactly.
brush up on stuff, or if there was things that you kind of missed the first time round, you can rewatch it. In fact, I think Ash said he watched like the second and third lessons like 10 times.
Yeah.
Like, he's crazy. So I don't know, man. Like that's abnormal.
That, like,
I think he's seen it more than
I
me.
want to know. I want to learn
Yeah.
now. And he
Yeah.
kind of goes in and goes 0 to 100 right away. So
Yeah.
2 days.
I don't think he sleeps. I heard he doesn't sleep.
he doesn't.
Yeah.
I can be a testament that he doesn't, because I'm getting text messages 5 a.m. sometimes
Yeah.
6 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like getting up for work.
Check
and
out
he's
this
like
awesome
messaged me.
render I just did. You fucker, do you ever sleep? It's just great. Yeah, it's just great.
Maciej, you have a couple questions.
Sure.
One of them being just about your texturing process in V-Ray. How do you go about doing that? Is it just using maps or?
Well,
Yeah, that was the question.
Well, obviously, when you're texturing, you're using textures. Like, you have to use photo textures in order to create photorealistic results. V-Ray has quite a lot procedural stuff too. So like dirt, like when you want to add, say, a layer of dirt or a layer of like dust on top of objects, it's super easy to do in V-Ray procedurally, which is great. I know Neil Blevins was using Birkin maps, or I don't know if he created them or he was just using and promoting them. He might actually created them, but those were like good for adding like a little more interesting procedural results to your normal noise layer, which you would use for like, you know, noisy surfaces, or like you can use it for different things. If you go back a couple of streams here on Twitch, it's one of the first streams, or maybe second stream I had with Grant. He was actually using procedural textures or procedural textures in V-Ray to create like different kind of rock surfaces or rock alpha maps that then he would use as alpha maps for ZBrush, and actually sculpting in ZBrush, as far as I remember. So there's quite a few techniques. It's shading, making shaders and textures. It's not an easy thing. It takes a long time to understand and create something that is realistic. It's very much related to the lighting itself too. So as you're learning texturing and shading, you have to learn lighting as well, because you can create amazing textures. They're gonna look like shit if the lighting is wrong. So those both are connected. But I always want to look at references. You know, if you're not looking at references and trying to create something from head, it's never gonna look realistic. It's impossible. Unless your brain is wired in a way that you can have a photo memory, then yeah, for sure. But I don't. And anytime I'm trying to create something from my head, I always end up just like, fuck, it's just not looking right. There's something wrong, you know? So you can get maybe 60-70% there. You know, this is the amount of glossiness I want to do, blah, blah, blah. But eventually you're going to hit that point where, like, no matter how much you're trying, you're still, you know, you're still stuck, and it doesn't look good at all. So when I was, like, for instance, when I'm doing the skin tests, you know, I'm using texturing XYZ displacement maps. They actually hooked me up with alphas for ZBrush. So shout out to those guys, because it's actually one person, Jeremy. Shout out to him, because he hooked me up with with displacement. The alpha masks for ZBrush, which are awesome for skin pores and whatnot. So I've been using that with texturing that model. But I look at ultra high res references. Like I try to find references of skin that are like 6,000 pixels wide, so I can zoom in and almost like pixel fuck it, you know.
Pixel fuck it, totally, yeah.
That's a new one.
Because
I've never heard that before.
Neither have
and I'm still like super far from like the very realistic results, because you'll get there with texture, like with the diffuse map, good sort of default, like the all shader that they added to V-Ray is awesome. It's like a good default for skin. And then once you add bump map and displacement map especially, that's when it starts to look like really realistic. But then I'm like maybe 50% into it. There's this guy on Instagram, I can't fucking remember his name, Artphil or something like that. He's like a forensic guy. He does like Cinema 4D and V-Ray. He uses Cinema 4D and V-Ray, but he does like those super ultra realistic, physically accurate models, which are reconstructions of faces starting from skull. And I want to have him on the stream, by the way. I already asked him. He's busy, but we actually might get him on the stream, which is going to be epic. But he goes to a level of detail where it's like almost like pixel peeping every single aspect of the skin, like adding the peach fuzz and looking at the, modeling each separate eyelash and adding like, it's just so insane. So when I'm looking at this and looking at what I'm doing, it's like, fuck, I'm kind of far away. But you have to like pick your battles. So I'm sort of like coming to terms in terms of how much I want to push in texturing, and then I want to get back to to more tools in ZBrush and trying to figure out the right workflow. So whether it's gonna work with DAS 3D or not, and it's just like I could go on and on and on. But the major idea is you look at references. If you're not looking at references, then you're not gonna get realistic results. So.
But is when you're creating a shader, whether it's skin, metal, whatever, because that's sort of where I'm at right now. Is the process always more or less the same, and then your maps varied, the values vary and all that? Is it that, or for each thing that you're going to create, depending on its category, whether it's like subsurface, metal, or dielectrics, is the process like the same more or less, or is it going to be different depending? Okay.
Yeah, you look at reference to know what you're aiming for, and then you look at, like with V-Ray, you look at mathematical data to find the right IOR, and V-Ray has like good BDRFs. They have GGX, which is very good for like glossy surfaces, because it's as like the when you have reflection and you have specular, which is you control the sharpness based on the roughness, right? But then like when you look at metal, for instance, the metal itself has also like this sort of like bloom to it. You're gonna have your spec, but also it's gonna be like a little fall off to it. So that's what GGX does really well. It's very good for glossy surfaces. Anytime you're creating, for instance, translucent materials or refractive materials, you're gonna want to go with like Phong or something like that. I think for cloth you would go with Blend, but I can't remember exactly. Like each BDRF has its own advantages. That normally I stick to GGXs. And sort of like the defaults. I'm pretty sure Grant would be a better person to ask those questions, because he's a master of basically shading. And by the way, anything I'm saying is something that applies to almost every other renderer. It's whether it's Octane or Arnold or Corona or F-Storm. Some of the naming conventions might be different, but the philosophy behind it is exactly the same. Once you understand how you build shaders, then it's pretty much going from there. What I've learned is displacement mapping and reflections are the most important. I rarely ever obsess about diffuse map, and oftentimes my diffuse map might end up just being a color and that's it, because everything else will be going through reflection and displacement and bump map, so yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I'm still having a hard time like clarifying that entire process. But yeah, hopefully, I tried looking into mastering CGI, but I find V-Ray so different. Let's say in terms of
what are you using right now? Keyshot?
No, I'm just using the Modo default
right
like renderer. Yeah.
I don't know how different it is from what it used to be, but from what I remember from Moto 8, it was very limited, dude. It's like you only have a couple of settings that you can change, but that's pretty much it. So if anything, I don't know. I mean, Octane now has subscription model, so you can basically get a license for $20 a month. It's limited to the amount of GPUs you can use. You can only use 2 GPUs, and you cannot use that license as a network for network rendering. That's when you have more than one computer. But in most cases, like majority of artists, they don't have more than 2 graphics cards, unless you're like Ash or me or Vitaly or other freaks that you don't know what to do with money, and then you're spending it on computers. But it's not that I'm saying that I don't know what to do with money. I'm just saying Bugatti. But I did spend a lot of money on getting like really expensive computer because it's just worth it, for the amount of work I do, the amount of progress I can do by just removing the obstacle of hardware limitations is very important, and when you look at say Fausto Di Martini or Vitaly or Ash, like all of those guys have really powerful machines, because otherwise you can create the same results, but it's going to take you significantly longer. And and if you're in a position where you can accept additional client, knowing that because of the render speeds and whatnot, you'll be able to do that extra work in a day, then yeah, it's totally worth it, So, but anyways, I don't know how Modo, how complex of a shader
it's
you can
getting
do in Modo.
It's getting good. Yeah, John O'Connell, who uses V-Ray, like we had a quick session, and he was telling me the issue with Modo now is that you actually have way too much option, which makes it a little harder to sort of master. But yeah. I believe Calina has a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Calina.
Yeah, about rendering, I'm sure that knowing the science and about how renders work and the materials might be of use. But about my question to AX, I'm wondering if he has ever used it for environment before.
So can you repeat that? I missed that.
Yeah, I was wondering if you used ZBrush for concepting environments before.
Environments? Yeah, I mean, you'd pretty much either have to develop like the assets within the environment, or you can use it for like landscape. I have pieced together scenes, and it's not ideal. I think the camera is a little awkward at times, and the subtool system, when you're working on like say an interior, you'd kind of want to group things together, and there's no like grouping like you would like layers in Photoshop, and that's some kind of functionality that I'm hoping they'll include soon. I believe there might be a plugin to help with that. But yeah, you can totally do environments in in ZBrush. In fact, you know.
Still better for that.
Pardon? Say again.
It seems like 3D Coat is still better for that.
3D Coat? Yeah, it might be. I've not used it.
Yeah, it seems it's much easier to handle environmental stuff. I've seen Mike Nash doing environments in ZBrush, but again, it's like, why would you? You would probably want to use something else. It's better for sculpting. It could be good for sculpting elements of environment, like let's say rocks and stuff like that. You know, like parts of like organic structures and stuff like that. You know, that's what's being used in games too. Like for Uncharted, environment artists would use ZBrush to get like really high detailed textures and really high detailed destruction of elements and all that stuff. That would be sculpted in ZBrush, but that would be specific elements. That wouldn't be like the whole scene. The whole scene would more likely be built in Maya.
Yeah. And I mean, even like 3D scans are taken back into ZBrush and touched up, and holes are filled and stuff like that. And that's that's really common for environment or character art.
Yep.
Alex, someone in the stream is asking how do you retopologize this kind of sculpt? Do you make an auto retopo or do you do it manually?
I don't retop. I'm not a character artist, so that's
okay.
Like, I don't really touch that at all.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
It's one of those
I have
things
no need.
It's one of those things that character artists would do. You know, I'm trying to get Dan Rorty. He's just busy. I think he moved recently too, from what I saw on Facebook. But whenever one of those guys will get time, then I'll make sure that they're on the stream, because I want to have Dan on the stream. I also asked one more person. I can't remember. Oh, Glauco, who works at Santa Monica. But again, like, all of those guys are busy, so it's always like a struggle to make sure they can find time, and I'll have time when they have time. So, but yeah, one of those guys will definitely come over. So, Momo, do we have more questions?
Yeah, Jonathan is asking for, I guess Alex's, but we can ask both of you. What's your PC setup?
Maciej, you go first.
No, it's embarrassing. You should start.
I've got nothing special. I've got like a lame graphics card, like an old graphics card. I think it's like a 770. I've got like 32 gig of RAM. I've got an old i7. And what else? Yeah, nothing crazy. Like a fairly standard setup. One graphics card, not 7. One.
Half of my graphics cards are out of commission.
Oh dear.
Yeah, my
It's like half of 10,000. He still has another 5,000 in his current machine.
Half of them don't work. You still got like twice.
My buddy Steve is he basically gutted the whole, like, my main works, because he built a second workstation for me, and then the moment I got it, my first workstation died, and we're just trying to figure out what the fuck happened, and there's some motherboard issues, but the one that he gutted to pieces and trying to fix has 4 GTX 1080s, 2 Xeon chips, version 3. I can't remember the exact number, but it was, I think each of them were 10 or 12 core, so it's 24 cores together, and then 128 gigs of RAM. And that's very similar setup that I have now. The one I'm using now is one CPU, which is 2680 version 4 Xeon chip and 128 gigs and 4 GTX 1080s. So I'm crying because I'm missing half of my rendering power. It can get pretty insane when you have eight of those working together. It also makes your room feel like fucking sauna. I'll tell
People
you
are
that.
hating in the chat, man. People are hating you.
And yeah, I know people are hating me. My wife hates me too.
Oh man.
But yeah.
Do you have yours water cooled?
So it doesn't really matter whether they're water cooled or not, because the amount of heat that they produce, it has to be pumped out from the box itself. So it's good for the health of your computer, but all the energy, the warmth, the heat that goes out of them has to be pumped out, and it's pumped out to your room. So thankfully I have a fucking AC in my room, in my studio room, so at least I can keep it cool. When I didn't have AC, if I would start rendering in 10 minutes, it would get to like 85, 90 degrees in the room, which is like fucking insane. It's like hot yoga, you know?
That would actually solve a lot of issues in Canada.
Yeah, I can.
That would actually put your bill, your electro bill, like way down in winter. That'd be actually awesome.
No, it's those two, like all of those CPUs. It's fucking. You remember that episode of what was that film about Christmas when they like turn on all the lights in the Santa film? I can't remember. It's played like every fucking year. But there's this film where the guy turns into Santa, and he does like the family. It's like a family guy. He turns into Santa, and he doesn't even know that. But when they turn on the Christmas lights on the house, and then you look at the meter for electricity, goes like fucking spinning all of a sudden. That's basically what happens.
National Lampoon.
Yeah, that's basically what happens when I get on the rendering. It's insane. It can get insane, but it's worth it because like it just cuts the rendering time so much, and even for previews, because most of the work you do, especially when you're using GPUs, you'll be doing in preview. So you'll be working real time with results real time on your screen, and that's something that is really good. You know, you don't have to wait for results. You see them immediately, and you can immediately add changes. So that's the biggest thing.
Cool. I guess we have one last question. Alex, Lars is asking, like, this character that you're building, is it just mainly for like concept art, like still image, or do you actually hand it over to a character artist who would then do the retopo, or?
It can be both.
Okay.
Like if I'm designing a character specifically, then yeah, that will go to a character artist. Obviously, I get a variety of different tasks day to day. You know, it could be like a specific, like I say, a specific character. It could be like something for a scene. So yeah, I mean, it's totally dependent on the task. But yeah, the process would be I kind of do a concept sculpt. I'd hand that over to character art after the design had been approved, and they'd help iron out technical issues. Ideally, there'd be like a line of dialogue with technical animation, and they might raise some concerns, which might mean we do a bit of redesign, and then yeah, the character artist would tidy up my sloppy work, retopologize it, and probably redo parts of the high-res sculpt, if not the whole thing. But they have the benefit is they have everything there, pretty much. They have the volume there, and there's no kind of misinterpretation of the big forms. Yeah.
Cool.
And do you always start with the 2D sketches, or do you just jump into, at this point in time with your experience, do you just jump into 3D concept?
I often just jump straight into 3D, just because I feel it's so quick to get a good idea of volume in ZBrush. But yeah, I will often just do little thumbnail sketches to explore a few ideas really quickly, and they could be like scribbles on the back of a napkin or something, really really crude. but it gives me an idea, and then I have something I can kind of refer back to. But it's you know, it's one of those things, like, as you become more accustomed to the tool, you probably use you know, the 2D design process a little less. But it's, you know, I think that those skills are invaluable.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that I think every 3D artist should kind of work on is 2D as well. I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I would say every concept artist should think about 3D too. So.
Yep. Totally.
Because moving that direction. All right, guys, let's wrap it up here. What's my second
Maciej.
stream today?
Maciej, this last guy is asking, do you create your own material library, or do you come up with new shaders from scratch for every
I'm
scene?
very bad at it, so I usually start from scratch. Because I'm the one thing I hate about Max is doesn't, like, Modo has a good sort of content library where you can find stuff really quickly. Even Cinema 4D is better at it. Max kind of sucks at it. Like, the content library really isn't there. I wish there was like a panel where you can just, you know, you can dock a panel which is gonna have the shaders that you can just drag and drop. That would be perfect, but it just doesn't work that way. So because I'm pretty shitty at creating, like, almost like kid bashing my shaders, I usually end up, you know, starting from scratch or basically importing shaders from other scenes and, you know, rebuilding them that way. So there's also V-Ray minus materials.de, which is a very good resource for, like, community created materials, and some of them are pretty good to start with, some of them are okay. If you want to build something really quick, it's a pretty good library to choose from. So yeah, it's a good resource. I've learned a shitload from Grant, and a majority of the way I build materials is the way that Grant builds materials, or at least from what I've learned from his course. So
Okay.
yeah. Anyways, let's wrap it up, guys. And
Yeah, that's
was,
a wrap.
really nice. Alex, I want you back, and let's have a stream with Ash so we can work some of that. Get you on that rendering train.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get some more streams. We'll get some more going on. Calina, thanks for joining us too. So
Yeah,
really nice to
thanks
have
for
you.
the opportunity.
And we had Lars in the beginning, who's
Yeah,
one of my
thanks again.
students. Oh, you're still here. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yes, you're singing it.
Just
Yeah,
quiet.
Joking.
I don't want it to, you know, like,
No,
leave
I
a noise
appreciate
when
it.
I'm
I
leaving.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Funny. All right, guys, I'll wrap it up. We're gonna have more streams. Obviously, every Wednesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. This is a little different because Alex is at work on those times, so I decided to do another one later time. So
We should
There you go.
actually have more late night streams, because they tend to be like pretty rowdy, which is awesome.
well, I can get rowdy during the day too. You don't trust me, huh? What the fuck? Nah, yeah, it's all right. We're gonna have
Times.
more guests too. There's more guests in works, but you know, the consistency is gonna stay there. So yeah, there you go. Thanks, guys, and have a good night or good day, wherever you are. Some of you guys might be in the time zone where it's a day starting. So
Yeah.
have a good
I have
one.
to go to work soon.
Okay.
Oh.
There you go. I'm gonna have to go to sleep soon.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Dude.
Take care.
Take care. Cheers.
Ciao.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye bye.